Hey everyone, and welcome back to another Star Wars podcast. I'm your host, Melissa.
Hello, and I'm Melissa's brother, Matt.
And we're just two siblings who love Star Wars and want to talk and geek out about it. How are you today, Matt?
I'm good. I mean, I'm pretty excited. The content we were able to get this past weekend was pretty good.
We have
it's nice to have some new Star Wars shows. So let's just get it right into it because there's a lot that we have to break down for these last two episodes. I mean, an hour and a half of new content going on here, and it's exciting content. It is like in a period of Star Wars time that I don't think we've ever really seen before. So it's good stuff all around.
So we're going to have to dive in. But before we begin, this is our first episode in our series, Bad Batch Breakdown. And obviously, if you didn't know, we're going to be talking about the new Star Wars series, The Bad Batch, another hit from Lucasfilm Animation. Like you said, we have a ton to talk about. Do you just want to delve straight into it? Do you want to start us off with that? Because there is so much to unpack. We're going to be talking about the first two episodes today. So if you want to kick us off, Matt,
yeah, sure. I mean, let's kick it off because like I said, there's content that we're seeing. Obviously, Bad Batch was introduced in season 7 of Clone Wars.
Yeah, the first arc.
I guess if you give a quick synopsis, it's like a rogue band of clones who are all genetically modified to be different. They're all a little crazier than your other clones. They go on missions that the other clones can't go on, and they all have different abilities. There's one who's really strong, really smart, can shoot really well, and so they're not affected with the implanted chip that the rest of the clones are affected by during Order 66. And this show starts us off right at Order 66 when obviously all the Jedi are killed. Revenge of the Sith, like towards the end of Revenge of the Sith. And that's like a really interesting time period because after Order 66 and Revenge of the Sith, like that is, it's kind of open-ended from there to episode 4, New Hope, or I guess Rogue One now. So it follows these clones. It starts in Order 66, and now we get to see the kind of the transition from the Senate and the what is it called, the Galactic Federation Republic to a first Galactic Empire. Yeah, to the first Galactic Empire, and now we get to see these clones. They don't know what's happening. They are seeing all these other clones kill all the Jedi, and I mean, so far we're only 2 episodes into it, but it's what I was saying before is it's a cool period we get to see of the transition over from the Republic to the Empire.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the coolest thing about this show is it's like I said, a period of time in Star Wars that we haven't seen yet. Mm-hmm. You get some cool appearances from some cool characters. Saw Gerrera, Moff Tarkin. The clone from season 2 of Clone Wars who lives his own life as a hobbit in a random planet or something. A lot of cool appearances. So there's a lot to unpack here, but that's the highlights for me was seeing some of those characters and just to transition over.
So
what about you?
Well, let's just kick it off spoiler wise. And if you have not seen it, obviously don't watch this, but we're going to be talking everything that we saw, but don't
watch the show. By the way, I think it's important to preface every show by saying we're going to be breaking down. If it wasn't clear in the title, we're going to be breaking down these episodes. So if you haven't watched them yet, go watch them unless you want them to be spoiled for you.
The show is called Another Star Wars Podcast, but to get right into it, the opening just totally took me off guard. You got the Clone Wars narration. We got the 5 seconds of Revenge of the Sith animated footage, which I did not expect. So I was just oh my God, this is so amazing. What are we going to see? I don't know if you knew who the 2 Jedi were in the beginning, because those characters actually have a huge significance for the people who watch the animated shows. Do you know anything about?
No. And I was going to ask you about that because I have no idea, but I was they probably have a significance. The only significance in my mind was that the voice of the young Padawan is way too deep for him. He sounded like a 45-year-old man. He's hey, what's going on here? And you're well, you look like you're 14, man. Why is your voice so deep?
Okay, so 2 things. Those 2 characters are Deba Balaba and Caleb Doom, and I know you haven't seen any of
Deba Balaba. What kind of name is that?
It's a fun name to say.
I'm not familiar. Okay, Deba Balaba. That's kind of a mouthful. I'm not very familiar with her.
Stepa Balaba, if you look at the end of The Phantom Menace, you can catch a glimpse of her character. She's very, very brief in the end of that movie, but she is a Jedi Master, obviously, and her Padawan is Caleb Doom. And have you seen anything of Star Wars Rebels? Like, do you know anything about that show? And do you care if I spoil it for you?
I have not watched that. I know little bits about it from what you've told me, but go ahead, spoil away.
Okay, so, and I will get into the deep man voice thing. That will come soon. But the first part of that is Caleb Doom is the character Kanan Jarrus in Star Wars Rebels. So in Star Wars Rebels, you have your main crew, and Kanan Jarrus is one of the main characters, and he is a ex-Jedi kind of turned a cowboy rogue in that show. And he's kind of like abandoned his Jedi heritage and run away from it. And he has this great character arc that gets him to come full circle back into who he used to be. And he is that little boy that you saw in the beginning of Bad Batch, Caleb Doom. And that was kind of a surprise to me specifically because the story that they told in Bad Batch of how Order 66 like happened is not how it was previously established. So that was kind of a retcon. It was like a mini retcon. I actually have the comic here. So in 2014, there was a comic that came out called Kanan the Last Padawan. It's a gorgeously illustrated book. It's written by Greg Wiseman. And it's a very, very different take on what happened with his version of Order 66, like what actually happened to him and how he escaped and how like that whole experience was for him. And it flashes back between who Kanan used to be, which is Caleb Doom, and how he changed his name so he could go into hiding when the Empire rises. And so they have like this whole comic, they have this whole story. And so when that opening happened in Bad Batch, the first thought that I went through my mind was, oh my God, they changed his backstory. They changed who this character, like who this character was, and when he experienced Order 66, which I thought was really interesting because a lot of people are debating that right now. So Kanan is he's
Caleb the little stinker boy Padawan with the long, really deep voice.
Okay,
right? So that's what the episode starts with him. He runs away, so that makes more sense. He appears in Rebels now.
Yes. So here's
he
the
does
thing.
Significance, not a random thing.
Well, here's the thing. Freddie Prinze Jr. plays Kanan, Caleb. That was him. Wow. That was him in the episode. And I do have to say, I loved this opening episode, but my one qualm with it was his voice. Because isn't he supposed to be like 12 or 13 there? Like,
yeah, it's pretty funny. That was the one thing to me. It caught me a little off guard, but it's a very cool opening scene. You get to kind of see they don't waste any time starting. We get to see Order 66 again. And obviously, clones are confused. He gets away. And then you kind of go back to Camino and there's that debriefing or whatever. And the thing that I thought was cool was the original audio they used from Revenge of the Sith with Palpatine announcing Order 66. That's pretty cool. And you can kind of see like, it's the first moments we have after that Empire's like established and there's some confusion going on. So I thought that was really cool too. It's nice to know that character, that Padawan at the beginning, kind of ties into another show, which I haven't seen. So maybe I should go and watch some of those episodes. But yeah, the like transitional period of all that I thought was really cool, and seeing kind of like the struggle. And then moving on, I think you want to describe the rest of the episode. What happens?
The clones, so I do have to say the whole like Camino thing, going back to Camino, and they walk by the Bad Batch, like walk by the body of the Jedi that's being carried away. It was really sinister. Oh, by the way, this is like the first time that Matt and I are discussing this episode. We have not talked about this prior, so we're actually just getting our reactions for the first time to this. No, when they were carrying the body of the Jedi away, I was so disturbed by that. I was so put off by it because I was like, you see the clones in the Clone Wars, and they're made out to be like the good guys, like the heroes, like, oh, they're going to defeat the villain. They're friends with the Jedi, and it's like this really good stuff. And then you have Bad Batch, and it's like this stark contrast of like, no, these guys are bad. Like, they're evil. They've killed Jedi.
Yeah, there's a switch in their head that's been flipped.
Yeah, and it was so like, I was so disturbed by it. I was just like, I don't like looking at these characters that I considered good guys in a prior show, and they're now being played off as like Empire. That's so creepy to me.
I think they did a really good job of like conveying that, though.
Yeah, just the sinisterness of it and having the clones or the Bad Batch like
Yeah, like
out
they're
like a
walking
sore
through the
thumb.
halls and they're like, oh, like, they're trying to be friendly with the other, their kin essentially. It's themselves. And it's like totally different type of vibe going on throughout the entire base. So I
Yeah,
thought they did a really good job of like communicating that, like, oh, something's definitely changed,
weird. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very off. And then we do run into a new character, Omega.
Omega, the New
Omega.
Zealander Australian girl. Yeah,
I
interesting character, interesting addition. I mean, I think that's like, it's very similar to kind of Mandalorian, how you have this child
yes.
that kind of comes into the picture, and now they kind of have to look after her and figure out, like, who is she, why was she made, what's this whole, like, how does she fit into this picture, which I think is an interesting element to add. You add someone totally new, fresh. Obviously we've seen these other characters before in Bad Batch, but with her, we've never seen her. We don't know where she came from. It adds an interesting element of like mystery to the show. And now we're going to have to figure out like where that goes. And I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to like watch unfold. Like with Mandalorian, watching the whole thing with, Grogu unfold.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was a good call to have it like a child and B like a little girl. I thought that was a really good writing call because it really switches up the dynamic of the Bad Batch, who are just like these elite soldiers who are really gosh darn good they went like at what they do. But if you throw a kid into the mix, it kind of like throws them off. They're like, what do we do? It's a child. We don't know how to deal with this. And I just thought that was a really cool addition. I also was so relieved that she was not like a Saturday morning kid sidekick. If you get what I'm saying? Like, because that was my concern when I saw her in the trailer. I was like, oh my God, please don't be like an annoying kid tag along and don't make me hate you. like that was
well, that's the difficult thing when you like introduce any kind of new characters, but especially like a younger one. It's like you don't want to have that element of like annoyance. But I think you're right. I don't think that's not how I felt about it at all.
I was surprised.
It seems like she'll be interesting, and it's kind of like she's following them around and like just as curious about them as the viewer is. Like you're sitting here watching it and you're like, oh, what's going to happen? Kind of similar to like her. She doesn't really know what her place in the world is yet.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting too because I thought back to like when Ahsoka Tano was first introduced. Like people were like, oh my God, like you're just like the annoying tag along little girl. Like, please don't get in the way of my favorite characters. But Omega didn't even like give me that impression. I was like, oh, she's a kid. Like she's a child. She's curious about them. Like, I get that. I understand. I'm interested to see.
So she's not in anything. We don't have any idea who she's never been, as far as you know.
There's been no prior story, when she popped up, like I think they pretty much confirmed that she is a female clone of Django. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Like that's how it came off to me anyway.
Kind of, yeah, I guess. Or just I kind of came off to me is just like they made a clone of her for some reason.
Yeah, and like
which is like I don't know. It wasn't 100% clear, but I don't think I don't think it's supposed to be yet. I think it's supposed to be like kind of a mysterious thing. Like I said, we're gonna find out over the course of the next couple episodes, whatever. But I don't know that it's supposed to be 100% clear, unless I missed something.
I like her. I loved the fight scene in the mess hall where she throws the food and then they like walk away and then there's like a second throw and it's just Wrecker. I laughed so hard. I thought it was so good. There's also a moment I want to talk about. Obviously, like the animation, like blew me away, like within the first opening shots. Like it has just come so far since Clone Wars. But something that I've noticed in this episode in particular is that you can't watch what's happening in the background of a scene without something going on. So something's like always going on in the background, whether that's like a character reacting to another character or a funny facial expression. And there was one moment in the mess hall before the fight scene happened where Omega gets up and she puts her plate down on the table and they all look at her, but there's like a split second of a shot where like Tech is going like he peers like through like the arm crack of like Hunter. He just goes like this and I laughed so hard. I could not stop laughing because his head just kind of like peaks out of nowhere. I don't know. It killed me. It made me laugh so hard. But like the little nuances.
Yeah, I mean,
of animation.
Yeah, to your point, the animation's like, yeah, it's great.
Oh my
it's
God.
fantastic the whole way through. You know what else I liked? The Prime Minister of Camino, that guy, his voice was the same, I
It's
think,
what's his
as
name?
what it was in
I wrote it down.
Attack of the Clones.
Yeah, it's oh God, I know
I
the
loved that.
female. It's I wrote down his name. It's it's Lamassu, the Prime Minister.
Yeah, but it's the same voice actor as in Attack of the Clones. So I thought that was awesome. I love how they do little things like that. Also just have, like I mentioned this a 1,000 times, but having Tarkin in it is so cool because then you're starting to introduce how stormtroopers come about and how they decommissioned the clones. It's too expensive. All right, fine. That's logical. You know what I mean? It's not just like, because I remember when Attack of the Clones came out, I'm like, oh, they're all clones. And then you're like, oh, wait a minute. They're not. They're conscripted soldiers. And you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why would that happen? Finally, we're getting answers on this.
Well, I was
as all this stuff is happening.
I was gonna say, Tarkin is just like, it's too expensive, throws all the money into the Death Star.
Yeah, I know. Well, maybe they need to cut some costs. I mean, making your own clone army can't be cheap. It's got to be similar to the cost of an empire. But I mean, you at least find out what the motivation is there. He doesn't like him. They're expensive. He's never like, they set that up earlier on, like in what was it, season 5, season 6, when you see him for the first time, like a young Tarkin, whatever.
Oh yeah. He's like, which by the way, that war aged him. Boy, that guy does not look good. He did not have happy fun time.
I was thinking the same thing. I was like, how long ago was that supposed to have been since the last episode we saw him in? If it was recent, then he aged terribly. But that's fine. I mean, whatever, they're doing their best. I mean, I think it's just peak Star Wars because I don't think they ever really know where they're going. And it's been this way since George Lucas made the first movie or the fourth movie. He thought that was going to be the first movie. He ends up, jigsaw puzzling everything everywhere else. And that's kind of like, that's kind of part of why Star Wars is great. Is it's like, they don't know where they're going and they have to figure it out as they go along. And sometimes it works out. Sometimes it doesn't. Like for me, in my opinion, it didn't really work out with like the sequel movies. Like they tried to figure it out. I think they kind of swung and missed there. Like with Mandalorian, they were just kind of figuring it out as they went along and it worked out perfectly. And I think that's what they're doing with this too. Like this is just one of those symptoms of being in that Star Wars universe where they haven't really 100% figured everything out yet. Like I don't think Bad Batch was planned for more than a couple of years, Oh
yeah.
So whatever. I mean, I still think they did a good job tying it together. I think his character is going to be great. The fact he's going to be like the antagonist throughout the season, it'll just be interesting to see how he fits in here and there. And it also makes me wonder how much of like the Emperor are we going to see? Are we going to see Darth Vader at all? Like,
I think there's a lot of we do have some questions on our Instagram that we should get to later that are really interesting. So I'm going to allow you to theorize on those. But going back to the episode, we do get to see Saw Gerrera again, which is very cool.
Yeah, that was awesome. Gorgeous hunk Saw Gerrera. He's just, I mean, talk about a glow down. He, like where he is now as like this insurgent in the forest, and then he becomes Forrest Whitaker in Rogue One with like his asthma mask or whatever. Like, hey man, I don't know what happened. We better see what happened to him, why he became so fat and useless by the end of Rogue One.
Oh my God. No,
but obviously I'm kidding. He's awesome, but it's good to see. It's cool to see like the younger version of him and like how he came to be. And you find out like a motivation for why he is the way he is.
Yeah. And if you even going back to the Clone Wars, it's like when they, spoilers again, when they killed his sister, Steela, in that like crazy arc with Ahsoka training the Onderon rebels, is like you kind of get those seeds of like why he's doing what he's doing and how he just gradually like deteriorates like over time. Because he starts off
it gets crazier and crazier.
Yeah, he gets more and more insane. And they even highlight that in Rebels, is that he's kind of an extremist.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is if you see him in you get to see him in Jedi Fallen Order, the video game too.
Right.
And that's an interesting thing. So it's just kind of cool how they brought him in. They made this character in Rogue One and they brought him in little places here and there. And you kind of have to get to see the evolution of him from point A to point B. He's a really cool character. And I love that scene, like in the forest where he's explaining why the Empire isn't good to these clones who really don't know how exactly to feel about it. They're like conflicted. And so it's just it was a good storytelling device to have him like kind of help explain to both the clones and the audience why it's not a good thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that brings me to the other thing that I was super interested in, which is the general concept of Order 66 in this show with the clones, because when it's initially called in the beginning, they don't know what it is, save for Crosshair, which I think is really, really interesting. And it wasn't hard to tell that that was going to be a thing, because in the beginning, Crosshair's like, good soldiers follow orders. And you're just like, dang it, that is what all of them say when you're under control of the chip. So like, what's your opinion of that, evolution of Crosshair going like, you're wrong to Hunter. Oh, you've made wrong choices. And he's clearly having some kind of internal conflict. And then by the end of the episode, he's like fully betrayed them through no fault of his own. Like, talk about that. Like, what's your
I don't know.
that?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think like he was always under control of it. It just wasn't that strong. I mean, and they touch on that, but I think to me, he's under complete control the whole time. And I don't even really, I don't know if they meant to have it so you felt this way, but like, I didn't really feel like there was that much of an internal struggle. Cause I mean, you think about it, from the first scene, he's shooting at, what's his name? Freddie Prinze Jr. Caleb. He's shooting at him in the trees, like he doesn't even hesitate, like he knows that's what he's supposed to be doing. And it's a smart move because like you have to have, it's a good way to kind of tear up that group a little bit and create that conflict, that internal conflict of like, oh, we turned, this one guy bad. And now we got to fight against, our teammate. And so it makes sense as a storytelling device. But I didn't really feel like there was too much struggle within him.
Right. There was,
but I liked how they did that. Like it made sense to me, if that makes sense.
There was that one scene where they're in the cell before they take Crosshair away, and Omega's like, I know what you're gonna do. She's like, but please don't do it. And you can kind of tell that he's kind of fighting it off. Like there's like a second where he's just kind of, taking it in for a moment, and then Omega comes over to talk to him. And so I did kind of get the impression that there was a little bit of a conflict, like the programming was working on him, but there was a little bit of conflict because they did that thing again with the animation that's so amazing in the show, is they did the thing where his eyes dilate and then they go back to normal, kind of like how Rex's did.
Right. Yeah. Which, by the way, speaking of Rex, we got a Rex name drop in
well hold on 1 second. we'll get to that episode in like 2 seconds.
Okay.
There were 2 thoughts I had near the end of the episode. The first thought is that, I don't know if you caught on to this, but Omega had a moment with every single one of the Bad Batch. Like she had like a moment. Do you get what I mean when I say that?
Oh, yeah. No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
She had a moment.
That does make sense. Now that you mention it.
She had a moment with Echo, right after the mess hall scene. She had a moment with Wrecker with like his like doll.
The doll.
Thing. Yeah, the doll. Yeah. And then she had a moment with Crosshair when she was like trying to
shooting him at him.
No, in the cell. No, that, and did she have a moment with Tech? Now that I'm thinking about it, did she have like a specific moment? Because I thought she did with each of them.
I think you might be right. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to go back and look because I do remember. Now that you're saying that, I do mention that, and it's probably on purpose.
That's what I'm saying. Is she seems very. Yeah. What I got from that is that she's very empathetic. Like she almost comes off like she has all this knowledge that they don't, and so she's just able to understand them more. Like because she tells Echo when like he's hooked up to the machine, she's like, "Oh, I don't like being hooked up to the machine either." And then she tells Crosshair, "I know what you're gonna do, but please don't do it." And then she like notices Wrecker looking for the doll, and she's like, "Oh, were you looking for this?" So I felt like that was really intentional, to have those moments where she was kind of like reaching out to each of them. And then she clearly has this Mandalorian-esque bond with Hunter, which I will talk about later because I'm kind of obsessed with that. All in all, I know that I'm paraphrasing tons here. I'm just obsessed with that.
I mean, it's a long episode. There's a lot. There's like a lot to get through with that. Like it was long. And it's a lot to unpack within a really cool period of time. And that's what it's going to keep coming back to, for me at least, is like, it's a period of time we haven't seen before of like the transition. Plus you're dealing with these new characters, like going back to Camino, which I think is really cool. What's going to happen there? Are they going to shut down the facilities? Like what's going to happen with her? Like there's so many questions that are left to be answered throughout the rest of the season. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how that happens. And I'm going to try not to speculate too much. But it's hard not to, especially in like such an interesting and dark period.
They really kicked it off, and I feel like in the typical Star Wars fashion with the first episode, they raised more questions than they answered them.
Yeah, and that's what you should do, I think. Yeah. Like that first scene's perfect. That's exactly what they should. And you and I were talking about this. Like, I wonder if we'll get to see Order 66 again, and we did, and that's awesome. And I think that's exactly how you should do it. It keeps the energy high. And it, like you said, it leaves more questions to be answered, but that's what you have to do. I mean, how many episodes are in this season? 13? 16. Yeah. So, I mean, that's plenty of time. And, they gave us 2 episodes in 1 week. And the second one felt a lot more like the first one felt a lot more like almost like a movie type of story to it. And the second one felt more like a Clone Wars episode, which was fine for me, Yeah. But I'm glad you get that all at once, because now it sets up a lot. You're like, at first I'm like, I don't know, what are they going to do with this show? Where's it going to go? What kind of stories are they going to tell? Now I have a much better idea of like what it's going to look like. They've really set it up nicely. It'll be interesting to see how some of these characters play in, and how they tie it all together, and how they end it. Like, are they going to make a second season? Like, what's the purpose of this show?
Right.
And we already know they're tying in other characters. They'll tie in, Fennec or whatever that chick's name is from Mandalorian, and potentially they already, potentially the Emperor, like Tarkin's already in it. Like, there's so many things. There's so many directions they can go. And you can tell, like, Dave Filoni's really hit his stride with these last couple shows. That he's come out with. He'll do anything, and there's so many different directions it can go. And I think that's like the coolest thing about this.
Like, I have no idea what we're in for, but I'm so excited to see how they tie everything together, especially because like it's clone centric. Like the Clone Wars obviously were clone centric, but like this is like, now you're going to get into like an area that is not more so focused on the Jedi, but on how we got from this transition point from the Republic to the Empire. So I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. I think it's going to be really good. I do have to tell you, I had a thought that just hit me, and I know we're probably going to keep going back to this, but on the whole Freddie Prinze Jr. as a 12-year-old, I thought of that. Oh my God, please don't make fun of me. I thought of that meme from 30 Rock with Steve Buscemi, where he's like, how do you do, fellow kids?
Hey, I'm just a Padawan. Don't mind me. You're like, oh, okay.
Like, I feel
Freddie
like
Prinze.
I thought they would have pitched his voice up a little bit.
It was pretty funny. I mean, of all the complaints about I could have by the episode, that's a pretty minor one, but it is funny. It's just a funny creative choice. Like, his voice is almost deeper. And if it's the same voice actor as it was in Rebels, wouldn't it be funny if his voice is like deeper now than it was when he recorded Rebels? Probably is.
Well, here's the thing. Freddie Prinze Jr. as Kanan was perfect casting. Like, he was so perfect as Kanan, but if you're a 12-year-old boy, I got to tell you, puberty must have hit fast, and it must have hit hard, because the clones are probably younger than how old Caleb is in that scene, because clones age faster. Like they look like they age faster, but they're actually younger.
Right.
So it's like in Clone Wars, Rex is actually younger than Ahsoka. So he's younger I think he's younger than her by like 2 years. So it just makes the whole scene with Caleb and the clones that much funnier.
Right. Yeah, he's like, that's such a weird dynamic.
Sorry. Freddie Prinze Jr., if you ever watch this, I love you as Kanan, but maybe your voice should have been pitched.
Also, make some more rom-coms, Freddie Prinze, while we're at it. Where you been? In some more live action movies. What was he in? Like, She's All That and stuff. Those rom-coms from the 90s.
I was thinking Scooby-Doo.
Okay, or Scooby-Doo.
Do another Scooby-Doo.
But yeah, then I guess moving on with that episode, like I'm blanking. How does that what's the second half of the episode? There was just so much.
There's so much that happened. So by the way, guys, excuse us if we're all over the board with this podcast. This episode was so much to take in. It was an hour and 17 minutes. It's a lot. So if we're all over the board, I'm sorry, but like, it was a lot. There was a lot to take in. It ended, the second half of the episode is they come back to Kamino. Tarkin comes out and he's like, yeah,
Right.
you failed.
Right. And they jack up the microchip in
Crosshair.
sharpshooter's face. Yeah.
Oh, wait, by the way, I do have to mention this. I have to mention this.
Terminator style.
True. I do have to mention this. Where is he getting all of those toothpicks?
Maybe it's in the galaxy far away a long time ago. Maybe the toothpicks don't deteriorate in mouth and you can just chew on the same one all day every day. Gross, but maybe that's what happens. I don't know. Maybe they're made of a different material, or he just likes buying a lot of toothpicks.
He just has like,
however, he does enjoy them. I find myself, if I have toothpicks, I'll just chew them to bits within the first 30 seconds. But with him, it's a nice little character tick he has.
I don't know. I find this is just so funny to me. It's just like, I have this mental image of Crosshair just like pulling out a box of like a toothpicks, and he just like sticks another one in his mouth. He's like, I'm going to look so great when I walk out here. I'm going to spit out the toothpick and just make eye contact and it'll be great. Like I have like this whole scheme in his head. Oh my God.
Also pretty embarrassing for him to get his gun shot out of his hand by a little girl who's never shot a gun before. Okay, that was the one thing with the episode I meant to bring up. She's like, I don't know. I've never shot a gun before. And you're like, what? You've never shot a gun before, ever? And you happen to hit it perfectly? I don't know if they like explain that at all, but I'm like, come on. She's on a training facility. Say she's been training with the clones or something. That's what I thought they were going to say. And he's like, nice shot. And she's like, well, I've never shot a gun in my life before.
Well, yeah, okay, fair enough. No, and then after that, they get on the ship, they escape. Crosshair's like, dang it, do we think he's going to be the main antagonist? Do you think they're going to get
he'll
back?
definitely be the main antagonist. 100% he'll be the main antagonist with Tarkin sprinkled in here and there. I think the one question is, are they going to kill him in the end, or are they going to fix him? Here's
the one thing that I had a thought about, and I discussed with my best friend is, so we have, Crosshair as the bad guy, not by his own will, of course, like that was kind of done against his will. So it's not like he's
Frankenstein monstery.
Yeah, he's not choosing this. But it does beg the question is, do we really think everybody's going to make it out of this show alive? Because I mean,
I don't know. And that's a question that's like, this is a group of people who they could potentially bring into live action later. It's potential, like you could maybe. Now, would that be a pain in the ass to shoot? Yeah. I mean, you have 5 guys who all kind of look the same. So I would probably err more on the side of maybe at the end they all die. I think they're probably going to see what the reception of the show is like first. I bet they leave it open-ended, kind of.
Yeah.
But I don't know. That's the thing is like it could go anywhere. You could potentially bring him into live action with another one of these billion Star Wars shows that's coming out in the next couple of years here. Or you could kill him off, and that would be kind of cool. It'd be like a Rogue One thing. It's like a one and done type of character, story for these guys. Because you don't really hear from them again.
That's true.
But I mean, once again, there is a whole big timeline here in between now and like A New Hope or whatever that these guys could be around. You don't know. So the possibility is around this. It just depends on where they want to go and if they have plans to do anything. Like, if they do, it's probably already in the works,
That's true. I didn't think of it that way. It's probably a large part of that's probably based on like reception, but it's also interesting to think about story wise, because typically when you get into stuff like this, it's like, okay, does everybody realistically make it out of this alive? Like, is that like a realistic thing? Like, given, that these guys are targets and they're in a very, very difficult time period, and how they could be utilized in future projects. It's an interesting question to ask.
Fennec's in it. And I mean, she's tied with Mandalorian and like Book of Boba Fett stuff. So
I didn't think about that.
Yeah. I mean, Boba Fett running into either Rex or some of these other clones could be a really interesting like episode.
That would be, and that comes out this fall.
Yeah.
You're so smart. Oh my gosh, I didn't even think about that. But before we get into
full of theories.
Before we get into like all that, because you did bring up Rex earlier, let's jump head into this second episode, because that was, like you said, a little bit more like Clone Wars. But how'd you like this episode? I know you only recently watched it, like last night, right?
Yeah, I watched it last night. I thought it was good. It's like I said, felt a lot more like a Clone Wars episode. Obviously, they go to this planet. What is that, Felucia or something? I don't know what planet they go to. So they go
Look at my-
there. It feels a lot more like they have a mission they have to complete by the end of the episode. It's like, the gate codes or whatever they're called, the
chain codes.
tracking codes. Yeah.
Chain codes.
So they have to go get those and stuff. So I felt like, the other ones, the first episode is a little bit more epic. There's a little bit more going on there, but this is like, all right, now we're setting it up. We're getting to know the characters more. We're trying to figure out, where this season is headed. So I thought it was cool. I liked it. I don't think I liked it as much as the first one. I don't know how you're going to beat the first one though.
Yeah. That was great.
But it did feel it's Clone Wars. Clone Wars is back. And like, that's what it felt like to me. It was like an extended episode of that with just different motivations, different things going on. What about you? What did you think?
I agree with you where it was a little bit more like standard Clone Wars. I think they did a great job of setting up the characters in the first episode. And now you're kind of getting into the dynamic a little bit more. There was a reoccurring theme of just children in the first episode. And I really felt like they took that a step further with the second episode. Like a lot of the themes of the story that they're trying to lay out here has a lot to do with kids. And even better, like Bad Batch not knowing how to deal with a child that's just been like thrust upon them. And so I think they did a lot of interesting comparisons with how the Bad Batch view a child versus this clone, Cut Lawquane, who is a deserter of the clone army who went off and chose to marry Twi'lek. Is it Twi'lek or Twi'lek? Twi'lek and start a family.
I don't know.
Yeah, and so it was interesting that they had that contrast of like Cut Lawquane and his children and how he deals with them versus like the Bad Batch and how they deal with the child. And so I really liked what they did with that.
Yeah, you can see the different personalities of like how these different groups of, or this one clone came up as opposed to these other ones, and they just have a different view of the world, even though they're the same person.
Yeah.
Literally the same DNA.
Which brings,
they have different views.
Well, which begs the question is, can we officially say that Jango Fett had a soft spot for kids? Like if you like look at the evidence.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess you could. I mean, he had a kid of his own self, which is a little weird. Although Jango strikes me as more of like he strikes me as way colder than any of the clones, which I think it's a little weird. I mean,
yeah,
you don't really run into many clones that have that same demeanor that Jango has in, Attack of the Clones, but maybe that's on purpose. Maybe they genetically modified him that way. And like, I guess maybe they are more similar to him after Order 66. So
yeah, I thought was.
Yeah, I think he probably did have a soft spot for children. But I mean, who doesn't,
Yeah.
Like they're looking after her. They're trying to be good people. And like, that's what good people do, is like, if you've had some orphaned kid or someone who was of a certain age and they were alone and miserable and stuff, where they wanted to, go out and see the world they've never left before, you'd probably be inclined to do the right thing and help them as much as you can. Which, by the way, another sidetrack. Sorry, episode's so unorganized. But the end of that first one, ending with, the galaxy in her eyes.
Yeah.
The light speed as they're like, it's like, showing her first experience into the galaxy, I thought was really cool.
Yeah, that was a great shot.
Just a little side note. But yeah, I mean, I think anyone with half of a conscience would do what they were doing.
I'm kind of obsessed with the dynamic that they really very quickly created with Hunter and Omega. Like, I love like all like the little smiles that he gives her, when she wants, like when they go over and they meet Cut Lawquane, they meet back up with him, they see his family. And they meet his children again, and his children come out and they want to play with her. And she kind of like looks over at Hunter for like permission to go, like for permission. She's like, can I do this? And he's like, yeah, it's fine. It's kind of interesting how they've quickly turned him into the dad figure for her, which is, again, it's very Mandalorian-esque. I feel like Star Wars has, kind of hit like a nerve with people, like the soft spot nerve where it's like, ooh, they love the parent to child trope, so we're going to keep milking this.
Well, it's I mean, that's the whole backbone of what Star Wars is, right?
Yeah.
It's about Anakin Skywalker, his son Luke. It's about Qui-Gon and Anakin. It's about Mando and Grogu. It's about, Hunter and Omega. It's about like, it goes on and on and on, Han, Ben, like the father son, parent child thing is a very big aspect throughout it. And it strikes a chord with people because we all have parents.
Yeah.
You could have different relationships with them. It could be great. It could be terrible. It could be somewhere in the middle, but like, that's why it resonates with people, is like it's something that we all have in common.
I love the found family trope. I'm a huge fan of the found family trope, but it's just kind of like dang, it pulls on my heartstrings, the whole Omega and Hunter thing, and I'm really excited to see where they take it. But getting back to the plot, they go over, they meet his family, they talk, and then we get that name drop.
Sure do.
What? Tell me about the name drop, Matt, since I cut you off.
You tell me about the name drop. The name drop is Rex, obviously, which is someone who we haven't heard from since season 7 Clone Wars, and that's a one that we have potential to see. I think I'm surprised we honestly didn't see him in Mandalorian. I'm okay with it, but I think we probably have a more likelihood to see him on later. He's the most interesting character out of all the clones. I think probably more interesting than these Bad Batch characters, because he's been in, you know, way more episodes. You have a more connection with him, to Ahsoka and whatnot. So they name drop him and they ask him where he is or something, and we don't really get much information as to his whereabouts, do we?
No, we don't. And what really hooked me onto that is Echo's response, because Echo's like, you spoke to Rex, and Echo and Rex have that prior established relationship. Like they knew each other really, really well. And I think Rex only met the Bad Batch once. But yes. I'm gonna go back here to Rebels really quick. If you want to know more about Ahsoka and Rex's story, Rebels really, it doesn't dive in like head deep on what like what they were doing for the last 15 years, but you do get some more backstory on what Rex and Ahsoka were up to. I'll send you some stuff on that if you don't want to watch it, because I know you haven't seen it, and I don't know if you care if I spoil it. But we do get some backstory.
No, spoil away. Look, I'm like the one who's going to be asking some inquisitive questions here. I don't mind if it's spoiled for me. If you haven't watched those, maybe we'll put spoiler alerts and you can fast forward through the parts of the show, maybe that you don't want to know. But for me, I don't care about spoiler alerts. I've seen all the Star Wars stuff, at least thus far, that I'm like, you know, I have to have seen, and I'll go back and watch it later. But I mean, at the same time, you gotta have these things to fill in the gaps. Like you and I have to talk about these things. So spoil away. From my perspective, I don't mind.
Okay, so in Star Wars Rebels, we find out that Rex and Ahsoka split up shortly after they escaped Order 66 together. They split up and they don't see each other for like 15 years. It's really sad. I'm very salty about it, but we're not going to get to that point. During that time, Ahsoka is just doing her best to lay low. We haven't gotten a lot of information on what Ahsoka was doing for those 15 years, and especially right after the Empire Rises. With Rex, they have made it a point, and in Rebels, when we meet him again, we find that he's with these two other clones that you will know, Wolf and Gregor. If you remember from Clone Wars, Wolf is like, he was like Plo Koon's like right-hand man. And then Gregor was the one. I don't know if I told you to skip the droid arc. Did you skip it in Clone Wars?
I think so. Yeah, I skipped like the droid the underwater one, the droid one. I skipped the one, like any episode that I started and I was like, this looks stupid. I just fast forward.
Okay, so for the droid arc, there was a clone in the droid arc named Gregor who had amnesia, and basically the what's his name? Colonel Gaskar. I think that's his name. Oh my God, Steven Stanton. If I mess this up, I'm so sorry. Basically when they find Gregor, he has amnesia and he can't remember anything. So they basically help him remember that he's a clone and he's part of this army. So going back to Rex, when we see him in Rebels, is with Wolf and Gregor, and it is implied that he found them and helped them remove their chips, and they've just kind of been hiding out on this planet for all these years. And so when they name dropped Rex, which I kind of expected them to, I can only assume that Rex is going around warning clones and then like trying to help clones remove their chips because of where he's at in Rebels. And
gotcha.
So I was really excited when they name dropped him, because first of all, it's very sweet that Rex goes back to Cut and his family. Like first, like I like that he made them a priority.
Right.
But second, I love that they're slowly planting the seeds for Rex to meet up with him, because obviously he was in the trailer.
Yeah. Hey, and that'll probably be next episode or the episode. Actually, it'll be in the next 2 episodes, I think.
Yeah, it'll be something like that.
That'll be exciting to see. So it obviously leaves, once again, more unanswered questions as to like, how does he fit in with this and how does it end up for him? Like, where does he end up going? And do we see him later in a live action show? We don't know.
Right. Oh my gosh. I'm like, I gotta tell you, I'm literally.
I mean, we'll definitely. If we don't see him in the Ahsoka show, like that'll be ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. But yeah, we have the name drop of Rex, and that only begs the question too: is do I think we'll see Ahsoka? Possibly. I feel like they would have to use her very carefully if she did appear in the show, just because like whenever Ahsoka's in a scene, she steals that scene.
Yeah, I don't know that it'd be a good idea. I don't know. I mean, you'd have to make the entire episode about her, and also how does she really fit in?
Yeah,
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, in Mandalorian, it made sense to me. Obviously, you're dealing with Jedi, talking with another Jedi. With this, it's like other than just pure fan service, I don't know that it really makes sense.
Yeah, and I know.
Who knows? I mean, they could always do it. Like, there could be a way they do it where I'm like, oh, that was perfect. You know, I don't know, but I don't think it really benefits them by putting her in.
Right. And I agree. Like, I don't think that you should ever put a character in a show without having a purpose, because then it's kind of like, okay, what are you doing here? But I mean, yeah, overall with this episode, again, so much information to get through. Overall with this episode in particular is I really like the dynamic that they're setting up with Hunter and Omega. I really like the seeds that they're planting with like how we see like chain codes are now required as a part of the Empire because Republic credits don't work anymore. I love those little tiny ties.
Yeah, the little details that tie everything together in like a way that wasn't really understood before. Yeah, that makes it just starts to make a lot more sense.
Yeah, I just love that they're starting to fill in all these answers now. Like that excites me. That's like it just fuels my energy for again.
Yeah,
like,
and it doesn't feel forced. Like it doesn't feel like they're just forcing the information on you. It all kind of fits in naturally with like all the information they're putting in. It doesn't feel like they're just telling you this because like, oh, we have a gap we need to fill. It's like the information's slowly coming out and it's tying together these things that hadn't been tied together before, and it's just starting to click and make sense.
Okay,
and it feels Star Warsy.
Oh yeah, that's a big thing.
Which, not to say that the last couple of shows haven't. I'm just saying like with the sequels, for example, it didn't really feel super Star Warsy. And there's even a couple episodes of The Mandalorian that didn't feel super like Star Warsy. And I don't know what exactly that means, but I think if you know, it's just like
there's like a certain vibe that you get when you watch Star Wars, and not everything hits that same note. Really, I think I'm gonna pull up my phone here because I know that a couple people had questions for us that got sent to our account. So thank you for the questions, guys. Really appreciate it. Just give me a second to pull it up. Man, we've been all over the board with this episode.
I know. I mean, there's a lot to pull out. I mean, I feel like it'd be boring if we just went through every single thing one by one, but it's also like very dense. Like there's a lot of stuff that happened, and there's 2 episodes to break down. So every episode's not going to be this long of this show, but I mean, with the amount of content that just came out with like the first 2 episodes, it's like, you got to keep it long. We got to chat through it, Yeah.
Gotta get through it. Oh, it is funny.
By the way, everyone, like, also a reminder, this is your and I's first time talking about it. So
yeah,
it's not like we rehearsed this.
Yeah, we just had a massive rehearsal before.
Yeah, no, I mean, like we're talking about it. We're excited about it. We want to share each other's thoughts as they're coming to mind. So trying to be authentic here.
Okay, so one of our questions we got from Lorraine, and the question is it possible that Omega might eventually betray the Bad Batch towards the end of the series?
Yes.
What do you think?
I don't think it's likely. It's obviously possible. I mean, anything's possible. I don't think it's likely, but it could happen. I mean, it's a tough question to answer until we know who she is and where she's from. It's too mysterious. You know what I mean? That's like asking a question about Baby Yoda before we knew about him. Like we just don't. It's been 2 episodes, so
right.
I think it's possible. I don't think it's likely. I think she'll end up becoming something else totally. It's a totally new character. But if she betrayed them, like what would happen to her character then? I don't know. What do you think?
She's a child. I mean, like they make it very, very clear from episode 1 that she is a child. they also make it very clear that she has a lot of knowledge that the clones don't. I mean, she knew about the inhibitor chips in the second episode.
Right. So maybe she has one.
Right. And that's that kind of like.
But wouldn't she know that if she mentioned it? Wouldn't she know that?
I don't know, because her introduction by, oh God, what is that character's name? By Nala Se, the Kaminoan. She's like, oh, she's my medical assistant. So it's implied that Omega has this knowledge that the clones don't. Whether or not that would be used for something bad against them, I have no idea. But she's a kid, and so I can't imagine that a kid would have,
Yeah, I don't see it being very
intent.
likely.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible they could totally pull the rug from under us, but coming from somebody like that young, I just don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so.
The second question is kind of funny, and I'll answer that. But Ben asks, any thought on how Lula came to be? Wrecker's like little doll, like the doll thing.
I don't know. I was actually wondering that, like watching the episode, I'm like, why does he like this little bunny? That hasn't been, I mean, unless I missed it in another episode, him loving this thing so much. I don't know. I like to, like, he didn't have a mom. Like, it's not like these clones were like they're hardened people, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know how that came. I'm guessing maybe he made it himself. Maybe he's just a little wonky in the head and has a very childlike demeanor. So maybe he just made it himself. I don't know. Or maybe he wanted at a carnival.
he just went to the Kaminoan carnival. He went to the Kaminoan carnival.
I mean, they kind of have free reign to go wherever they want. There's probably some weird carnival thing they went to at some point. Maybe he got it. And I guess that's true. They are kind of young. Like, I know they age fast or whatever, but maybe some of their mentalities are younger than others.
Oh, that's a good point.
Like maybe he's only like, he has a mentality kind of like an 8-year-old, but he has 30-year-old experiences or whatever. I don't know. I haven't fleshed out this theory, but maybe that's what had happened. I don't know.
Kevin asked a question that we talked about earlier, but Kevin asks, I think since they are learning about the inhibitor chips, they may try and save Crosshair, but knowing Star Wars, someone is going to die. Sad face. Same, Kevin.
Yep.
I honestly think Crosshair will die. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would guess. I mean, we talked about this earlier in the episode. He either dies or they fix him. I don't think they fix him. I mean, they fixed Echo, I don't think they'll do the same. By the way, it's just boring storytelling. Like, I don't really have that much of an attachment to him. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if you do, but like, I think he kind of has to die. But they maybe not. Maybe they'll do something totally interesting and different. But I think in terms of like the way the story progresses, I think it makes the most sense for them to have this thing where maybe, there's this big battle towards the end of the season or something.
Oh God, what if one of them like has to kill him? Like, what if they make it?
They will. The 100%. That's what's going to happen. Yeah.
Oh God, and it would, or they could kill. Oh God, if they killed like Tech, I'd be so mad because I really like Tech.
Yeah, I bet two of them will die.
Yeah. Oh God, let's not talk about that. No, the show just got started. We can't talk about who's gonna die.
We have to speculate. We're breaking the show down.
Okay, it is called Bad Batch Breakdown. Oh man. Okay, so Inky asks, we saw, okay, I'm reading this right. We saw Echo give a bit of a freak out moment when he wakes up in the medical bay with the droid probing at him. Do you think that this was a trauma-based response from being experimented on? And if so, do you think that this will be addressed more in the future?
I don't think it'll be addressed. I think it's pretty obvious that's what it came from, was the episode where they were doing like tests on him and stuff in Clone Wars. And they were using his body as like an energy power source or whatever. That I don't really exactly remember. They have to break him out of that facility. Like, I think it's pretty clear that it came from that episode. It's a trauma thing. Yeah.
Well, and now that I'm thinking
and
about
maybe
it,
maybe he'll talk about it more as like a PTSD thing, but I don't know. I think it's pretty clear.
That also like reminds me, Echo, I'm sad to say this, Echo was really good friends with Fives, and Fives, as we know, had that whole arc where he figured out what Order 66 was, and he ultimately dies because of the information that he figures out. A lot of people have been speculating if Echo is going to find out what happened to Fives from Rex. that was another speculation that I saw.
Did he not know?
No, Echo doesn't know because he was put in that stasis chamber like right after the Citadel arc. So there's no way, because Fives died after the Citadel arc and he was a part of it.
With them. Right. Yeah, I bet he'll tell him. Yeah, I bet that's an interesting theory that'll probably come up later in the season.
I didn't mean to get off on that tangent again, but this is a show full of tangents. But thank you guys for the questions. I hope I didn't miss any.
No, look, it's going to be, keep sending in your questions. We'll keep speculating. I think that's the most fun part about these shows, is trying to figure out where we go next and seeing this new stuff and filling in the holes that we have that haven't been filled in before. This is something that I've been wanting to see for a while, is like that aftermath right after Revenge of the Sith. And we're getting that, we're getting the transition to the Empire period. So it's fun to speculate and talk about it. So if you guys want to speculate with us, send in more questions. I don't know if there's that email, Melissa, you want to share?
The email is just AnotherStarWarsPod@gmail.com. I'll write in.
So send your questions in, or DM us on Instagram. We'll keep talking about it, but that's the most fun part, is trying to speculate what happens.
I'm going to give you one more question because I did forget one and I don't want to skip over, but this is from Matt. This will be the last one. So this is from Matt to Matt.
This is from me.
Yeah, this is Matt sent in this question for himself, but this is a really interesting question here. It says that the theory that he sent in is Omega is one of the first successful attempts at creating a force-sensitive clone of a non-force sensitive. However, the attempt still wasn't perfect, resulting in her being female and having blonde hair. What do you think of that?
So they're saying they were trying to clone. She was the attempt of, so they're them trying to clone a force-sensitive person. Interesting.
That's a good theory.
Who would they have been? That is a good theory. Who are they trying to clone? Because we do know during this period, like that's what's his name, Snoke is. He's like a clone, isn't he? And then the Emperor obviously cloned himself. Spoiler alert for the sequels. So like we do know there's cloning stuff going on. Also, they meant this, and so it's not a bad theory because in Mandalorian you see this. They go to that facility where they're cloning, and you can see like an outline of Snoke there. So we know the Empire was doing cloning things. And I think we'll probably get more information. And that this question begs another question, which is like, what's going to happen with Kamino after it's fully out of commission? They're probably going to try to start cloning force-sensitive things. So it is an interesting theory. That is a good question, Matt, whoever you are. Good question. It's a good question to bring up. I don't know if it's true, but it could be. And it'll also, I think that it brings up questions of like, how are they going to address the Kamino stuff later on this season?
Yeah. And I thought that was Matt sent in a bunch of questions, but that one was the most standout one. And I know that we're quickly running out of time. And so I don't want to, no
problem.
Honestly, like guys, send in your questions. We love reading them. We love seeing them. And it's really fun to theorize with other people. So you should definitely keep doing that. Like we love to see them.
I think that's pretty much it. Great first week back. Great breakdown. Sorry for a little all over the place. We'll rein it in next week. It's going to be a shorter episode to talk about next week. And so there'll be a lot less that we have to talk about. But I think it's a good start with these first two episodes. Anything else to add?
Nothing other than the fact that I'm sorry for how all over the board that we are with this, but it's honestly, it's Star Wars. How are you not going to get all over the board? Like, I don't understand how that's possible.
There's a lot to bring up, and it was an hour and a half, over an hour and 45 minutes worth of content to talk about. So it's essentially a full movie. All right. So keeping it an hour all over the place, I think it's fine. Whatever. I think we did a good job, and whatever, we'll get better at it.
If you do want to find us online, we are on Instagram, *_wars_pod, and we are on YouTube, which is just Another Star Wars Podcast. We are also just Another Star Wars Podcast on Spotify. And our email is AnotherStarWarsPod@gmail.com. So you guys should definitely hit us up, subscribe, leave a comment with your personal theory, because we'd love to read them and check them out. And we'll see you on the next episode of Bad Batch Breakdown.